This is the Outliers Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this. Hello there. Niiamah Ashong here, founder of Outliers Edge and the Trailblazer Oasis, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. Today, I get a chance to be with one of those leaders here, a leader who is an outlier herself, who plays on the edge herself. And one of the things that I really appreciate about this leader is that she understands the importance and the distinction of being a leader for leaders, to help bring up and get into both the mindsets, the experiences, and into the challenges that come with being a leader, not just in the leadership skills, but like actually being a leader. And so we've been building a relationship over the past few weeks, and it felt like it was time to bring this outlier into our world and to help introduce her to all of you here. So Bevin, today we're talking to Bevin Niemann. Bevin, I'm really glad to be in this conversation with you here. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you so much. And I'm just honored to be called an outlier. You know, it's so great because that's usually something that's not celebrated in our society. So I'm all jazzed for this conversation.
Lovely. What feels good to you about being called an outlier for you?
Oh, I remember back to when I was doing my coach training, and there was this great exercise that my mentor coach took us through. And there was a series of chairs, right? There was a big circle of chairs, and there was a chair in the center, and there was chairs all the way around the edge. And he said, you can stand anywhere you want in this room. And I was like literally way out from the entire circle. And I'm like, I feel really comfortable here. I feel really comfortable here at that edge. And I think that, a lot of people who would resonate with being an outlier would say, maybe we feel a little misunderstood, or maybe, people kind of look at you a little crazy, right? Because you have a strange idea, or you're going to take this weird action and you make a choice that nobody understands. But I like that. I like living out there. It's a lot of fun. I see life as an adventure, really. Like that's really how I approach the whole thing. It's an experiment.
I'm smiling tremendously. What you just did there is one of the things I call owning your outlier, right? It's like some might think this, but I like that. Like this, like I feel good here. A huge smile came on my face because I'm like, yeah, there would be in that kind of an exercise, there would always be me trying to find like, where's the space that feels really good for me? And it's not where everyone else is. I'll tell you that. Where like if everyone's all around, I'm like, oh, I'm standing on a chair. Just because what does the life look like there? And also what more space does that create? And so even just as we start off this conversation, I feel the space that's being created in this between the two of us here, Bevin. So I'm excited for that. Bevin, I've gotten a chance to get to know you over the past few weeks here, but I want to just go through and get a glimpse of who you are professionally, right? So why don't you take us through some of like the highlights of you kind of professionally, and then we'll slow down, we'll go into your journey, we'll look into some of the things you're working on right now. But like if someone wanted to get to know you professionally, like what are you up to in the world?
Yeah. So right now, what I'm up to is helping empaths and light workers and mystics craft a lifestyle and a career that nurtures their sensitivity rather than works against it. So that's like my current work, but I've had 7 different careers. I've worked in retail, food service, account management, landscape design, nonprofit organizations, coach, writer. And each time I make these career transitions, I realize that I take all of the things that I've learned from those past ones and bring it with me. But yeah, when you tell people like I am a mentor for empaths and light workers, you sometimes get a little side eye there, it's like, well, what's that? And I love it. It's an opportunity to educate, right? And to bring people into this space when we're talking about outliers, someone who resonates as an empath, a person who can sense shifts in energy, not just notice like people's body language, but actually feel things that you can't see, feel things beyond all of that, whether that's environmental, collective. It's an interesting way of life to be in this space. And it's an opportunity to educate people about a series of outliers. Like they're probably 5% of the human population, empaths. And it's exciting to be able to advocate for people like myself and to connect them with really their power, their joy, giving themselves permission to like choose a life that works for them, that fits them, that aligns with what they want to do and what lights them up, without having to worry about societal pressures from their family system, and it takes a while to disentangle yourself. It took me a long time to disentangle myself, and I still have to work on it. I still feel myself going, okay, just because this is how it's always been done, or what the prevailing wisdom is of our times, is that the way I want to do it? And just giving yourself the permission to ask that question is really, really powerful. Even if you decide to do it the so-called traditional way or the common way. I don't just do things just to be a rebel without a cause. I am a rebel sometimes, but I do it for a reason, because I've thought it through, because I've actually researched and sensed into how that feels in my body and so forth. But yeah, that's really what I'm up to professionally. And it's been a really interesting ride, and it's certainly not done. I'm still going on this thing.
I feel it. And I wouldn't be on this ride with you here today. You might hear me like, yo, like, yeah, or maybe like, ooh, yeah, okay, I see you. But you're speaking my language, and you're hitting on things that I feel that we've all felt in different ways. And I want to try and make, as we talk here, make things real. And so you talked about the sentiment of just because it's always been done a certain way, or just because the prevailing wisdom is a certain things, to check in with yourself to say, is this actually still what I want to do? Can you give us an example of something recently that you took on that, or maybe even something recently, like something that you're really proud of, where you like actually went through that process of just checking in for yourself and saying, okay, regardless of what's happening around me, like this is what I really, this is what feels aligned. Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about something that happened on Facebook today. I'm in this, female entrepreneur group, and one of the women said, "Oh, I'm getting married in 5 months. Can anyone recommend a diet for me?" And, I thought to myself, this is the prevailing idea, that as soon as you get engaged, you have to hurry up and lose all this weight. You have to look absolutely perfect for your wedding photographs or whatever. And I thought to myself, do I really agree with that? And actually, I just recently got engaged. Just so excited.
Oh,
and
well,
my partner and I are
congratulations.
getting married in about 5 months as well. And you know what I decided? I decided to hell with that. I am not going to kill myself to lose weight. I'm not changing my diet. I'm not hiring a personal trainer. I'm buying a dress that's going to fit me no matter what, however I look, because this man has told me he likes me just as I am, and I like me just as I am. And so, of course, I bring this up in the group, and people, were like, why? Because everyone's like, here, this one keto, da da da. And I'm like, well, why are we doing this in the first place? Why are we perpetuating this idea that a woman has to look like a certain way? And then the other thing I said was, your wedding day, well, as beautiful as it is, it's only one day of the marriage, and probably not even the most important day of the marriage. Right. And so we're putting all this money, all this energy, all this like expectation into something that I'm like, I want it to be nice. I want it to be beautiful, and it will be, because he'll be there and we'll be making that commitment to each other. And that's all that matters to me. I'm not going to stress. I'm not going to freak myself out or be a bridezilla or any of those kind of things, just because the majority of society says that this is the norm and this is what you should be worried about as a woman. I'm like, I'm not worried about it. And it felt really good to that. And the other part of being an outlier, I think that we want to talk about is being willing to speak up publicly and talk about what you're doing, and ask those kind of questions. Like, how come we're not questioning this as women who have been pressured by the media, by so much of society to have to maintain a certain size, to look a certain way in our bodies? How come we're not questioning this? How come we're just automatically going, oh yeah, this is what I have to do? And so I have long been in many, many circles, the person that says, okay, wait a minute. Why are we still thinking that way? Why are we still doing that? Now, this person gets to do whatever she wants to do. It's her life. I honor people's sovereignty, but I've always been that person that speaks up and says, well, what if there's something different? Have we thought about the underlying root of these ideas, these beliefs that we've been carrying around as a collective? And is that really serving us anymore?
Yeah, as you say that, there's two things that come to my mind here. One, I'll ask the first one first, and then we'll go to the next one if it still feels relevant. I thank you for bringing out this example of like, it feels really recent, and it also, like, I really enjoy it because it shows just like how, when we're being in integrity with what it is that like we stand for, like we're able to see this in moments in life where we get a chance to practice it, or we get a chance to like put it into action, rather than it just being like only the big things. It's like we're in a conversation here, and how you show up in that conversation to me speaks to how like you choose to be in the world. And first, like, does that sound like agreement? You can push back on that one there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just really important to be in integrity to yourself.
Yeah.
Really is what it's about for me.
And I think it's easier said than done. So I like it's one of those things where so I'm going to play this out from a couple different perspectives here, just because I think a number of us might feel, hey, I'm curious about it from a number of different perspectives to see what kind of outlier you are. I love how you said, like, I'm a rebel, but I have a cause, right? And there's a sense of me that's like, oh, is it easy for you to like go and find the areas where it's like, hey, no one else is saying this, I'm going to go say that in like the everyday life. I know that you stand for something. So I also feel like on the other side of it, when it really, really matters, you also have like a really good sense of that. So let me ask you, what's the prevailing wisdom that you have that right now you might be challenging or choosing, or maybe not directly challenging, but because of who you are, the way that you show up, the people you choose to serve, so on and so forth. What is that right now you are, let's at least say, creating space for alternatives all around?
Yeah. I would have to say that is the whole paradigm around money. In the fall of 2021, I wrote and published my first book, The Abundant Empath. And it really wasn't here's how you change your mindset and your vibration, and then automatically you just attract all this money into your life. It wasn't that kind of book. It was really a memoir in some ways of my own journey, growing up in extreme poverty, then kind of going off into the world as a young person and like chasing status, money, all these things, getting it, and then realizing that is a pretty hollow experience. And now really coming into a state of much more balance. But it did push me off my edge. As a matter of fact, it's really ironic that about 3 months after I wrote this book, my business bank account literally went to zero. Right? It literally went to zero, because in the book I wrote, abundance is about more than just money. And the universe is like, really? Let's see how you feel about that. And I really had to just work through all the anxiety, all the fears, all the conditioning I've had that told me that, this is what you're worth based on the ones and zeros in your bank account. And in that past 6 months, I have come to a level of peace regardless of what's happening. So on one hand, I recognize we still participate in a late stage capitalist system. I still need to pay my bills. I need to be responsible with my money. I need to have a certain amount to make a living and to be secure and all those things. And that's fine. And I really don't care about it that much anymore. I really don't care about all of that. I don't care about bragging about it. I don't care about making it a thing. If I have more, I have more. If I have less, I have less. If, I even went to, because I have a global community, I decided to only charge $7. When other communities are charging, many more, and it's fine. Each person gets to make their own choice. But I deliberately realized I want to have a global community. And in many parts of the world, the currency exchange, for example, is very different than the United States. And even $7 would be a stretch for some sensitive leaders across the world. And yet I've stayed at that because I believe that when I bring people in, how much I charge doesn't equal the value of what I'm providing. The value of what we're providing when we connect with each other, like you and I are, is literally priceless, right? And someone's going to listen to this and they're going to get a golden nugget and they're going to be like, wow, that was just life-changing for me. That really shifted my perspective. How do you even put a price on something like that? And so what I've really been doing in my edge recently is, what does that look like for me? What is my relationship to it? Can I have a healthier relationship? It doesn't have to be from the energy of greed. It doesn't have to be from the energy of anxiety. It doesn't have to be from the energy of, look at me, how much I have. I can just be with it. I can be a steward for it. Sometimes there's more going out and sometimes there's more coming in, and I can just allow that to flow. And I'll tell you, it sounds really great as I'm talking.
I'm so glad you keep going, because I'm like, as you're talking, I'm like, I got to check this out, because I hang out with a lot of
wait a minute.
I hang out with a lot of coaches. I hang out with a lot of people, and I'm like, I want to make sure it sounds good. It sounds really good. But it doesn't always feel good, or it doesn't always feel like it's easy to come across. So like I appreciate you being willing to open up this door here and and walk through. I'm not sure how I'm going to be in this conversation. I'm like in my mind, I'm like, oh, I want to do I challenge? Do I come in? Do I embrace? Where does this go?
Because you know what? I've had my meltdowns. I'm not lying about it at all. I've had my moments just sitting in the bathroom crying, because I'm like, oh my gosh, my bank account is zero. What the hell do I do now? And then, I've had moments where I just felt completely transcendent, and everything in between.
It's something that I'm tapping in right now as you're talking, to capture what am I actually feeling, and why, right? Because I'm like, everything you're saying makes perfect sense, and I think you could play the same game to yourself here, coming up with saying the exact opposite and having that also make perfect sense, so it's not anything about what you're saying specifically that I'm curious about. What it is the element of, okay, I have a client that I've been working with who has done a lot of good in the work. She's in the social space, and one of the things that she's really a stand for is just because you're doing good in the world doesn't mean you need to suffer. Just and so there's some element in there that, as I'm hearing this, that's yeah, I totally hear where you're coming from. And there's another part of me is and I don't think suffering is the case per se, but I want to have this conversation, because I know there's a number of us that's why does it need to be about the money? Why can't it just be about the impact that we're making? Why can't it just be about what we're getting done in the world, right? I know there's a number of us that are thinking that, and so I want to pressure test this a bit here.
Let's do it.
And so the first thing that comes to mind here is really in the vein of can you? And I think this is actually really important. I'm glad that we're having this conversation, Bevin. I can feel that's the thing that comes in my mind is normally with that person is, can you do good in the world and still be paid and have your financial situation be incredibly solid and abundant, right? So there's people who are able to make all their bills work and all that, but it's always a little bit less free, right? Yeah. The question I have here is not necessarily about doing good in the world, which I think is good, but it's around, can you be you? Can you be you and still be successfully financially abundant or financially secure? I have my answer to it. I know that you're living out yours, but I want to bring this into the conversation because I think that it's one of the elephants that's in the room. It's like, of course, if I could just go out and do this, why wouldn't I? But like, I live in the real world. I have bills to pay. I have this, that, and the other. So I'm gonna play this from a couple of different perspectives, and let's keep playing with this, especially because money's your thing right now. So let's play it out with this a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with your client is that, we're not here to martyr ourselves. So that's not what I'm talking about. And of course we need to have our needs met. The thing about it is I want that for everyone, not just for me. So where I feel sometimes that I'm an outlier is that, right? I want for me to be financially abundant, for me to receive what I need and what I want, and to have a nice home to live in and all those things. I like those things. I also want that for everyone else. And what I find out in the world is that not too many people hold that viewpoint. Most people say, I want that for me, even in spiritual entrepreneurship, right? Even in spiritual entrepreneurship. And I will call some of my folks out with that because I've seen it. So there's a difference in the energy when you're saying, I want this for me and I want this for everyone. And not only do I want it, I'm willing to find a way to make that happen. So one of the causes that I'm so passionate about, one of the things I believe in so deeply is if every human being has their basic needs met, has food, clean water, safe shelter, sense of belonging in their community, medical care, has all those things. And we provide those to every human being on earth. Okay, we're talking theoretical right now. If we provide those to every human being on earth, can you imagine what would be possible if every single person is immediately taken out of that anxiety survival mode hamster wheel, right? So this is something I'm really passionate about. I don't likely think I'll see it in my lifetime, but it is something that I put my time, my energy, my money, my donations to, because if you're trying to find water, for example, how are you going to contribute all these gifts and skills that you have inside of you? It's just Maslow's hierarchy, right? It's like, we have to get these basic needs met before we can even start to become self-actualized, before we can really be a contributing member of the community. So underlying my entire piece is that I want it for everyone, not just for me. And this is a shift in paradigm from our society, which tells us we need to compete, we need to climb the ladder, we need to be better than the next person, we need to be better than our competitors. And I'm like, I don't even believe in competition like that. If there's other people serving empaths, I'm so excited for that because there's like 1.4 billion empaths on earth. I cannot serve them all. There's no way in my lifetime I could probably reach that many people. And I'm good with that. And I want to support and uplift. That's why I'm on this podcast. It's like, how can I support and uplift what you're doing? How can we amplify this energy together? So I agree with your client. We should not martyr ourselves. And I've spent time in the past parts of my life martyring myself for other people. I learned those lessons the hard way, for sure. I loaned people money. I co-signed on things. They didn't pay, and I had to pay. I learned the hard way, about this. But I still believe in generosity, right? I still believe in generosity. So I don't think it's a zero-sum game. Either I get my needs met and I have to do that and extract as much as I can from everyone else, or I give away everything. There's a middle ground here. And that's really, it's funny because for an edge walker, I often find myself in that middle ground. I find myself being that person that's like, okay, but it's both and it's the third option, right? It's like, oh, it's this or that. No, there's a third option. And there's a third option where I can get those needs met and I can be in service and I can help other people. And what I'm doing is, as I said in the beginning, completely experimental. I don't know if it'll work or not. But you know what? I've been through enough cycles, emotionally, financially, and other things to know that it's just a cycle. It'll come and go. I don't have $0 in my bank account now. I have much more. And so it was a temporary situation. And when we realize these are temporary situations, then there's like another level of freedom that I honestly have never, ever experienced before in my life. There is a level of surrender, letting go, not being as attached that I have never ever experienced before. And it's really exciting. And I feel like a brand new baby too, because I don't know how to navigate. I'm just like, what is this? You know, I see something and I'm like, yeah, I really don't care about that. That doesn't bother me anymore. I don't get freaked out about that anymore. There's something going on there.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna play with all, well, not all, because I feel like there's more than just one thing going on with that. But I love the energy. I love the way that you're looking at this here. I also love the term edge walker. I'm like, I've never heard it before. I'm like, if you don't mind, I'm gonna start using that.
I love
it feels good, you know. You talked about getting out of like the dualistic approach of like either or, you know, like exploring other options, like you know, the middle ground. And I think there's something beyond the middle ground. I talk about having conversations on multiple dimensions, and to me, it's a difference between being on two planes and then saying, well, what about, you know, depth? You know, like what about the passage of time, whatever it is, right? You're looking at, I feel that when I'm hearing you talk, you're like, I get that it's not just a dichotomy between one option or the other. There's a lot of different range in between it in terms of like the spectrum, but on top of that, there's a whole other dimension of like, what if that was, that's like completely irrespective of that. Like, where's my impact? My impact doesn't have anything to do with that, with those other numbers. You know, first, let me make sure, because I'm going to go on for a little bit, but I want to make sure that I'm capturing your essence properly. Like if I'm wrong or if I'm off, like just get me there.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. You know, what I offer in the world as my service, whether that's professionally or personally to the people in my inner circle, there's no price tag that can be put on that.
Yeah. So now let's continue on here, because and as we're talking, there's elements of this that feel really good. There's elements where I'm like, ooh, I need to like dive in more. And there's other components where I think like if we can slow down, there's something here for outliers to be able to see for themselves. And I really like when you said, like I said earlier, it's like, it's an experiment. Like my bank account's not to zero now, you know, but like, it's like, and when you said those two things, and you went on to say it was a cycle, I knew it was a temporary situation. A couple of different things came out for me, which is that like, of course, this is someone who's lived multiple lives. She's changed her career multiple times. She's been able to do things and just like, you know, she's like, oh, I'm writing a book now. Like that, like I want to call out like the level of, or call in maybe the level of like self-knowing that's there and self-trust that's there. It's like, yes, I'm making a decision, like, and in this decision, different things are going to look different than they have in the past, you know. But what I hear from you is like there's the self-certainty that's in there of like, and this too shall pass. I'll figure it out, or I'll do something different, you know. But and I want to really call that out here, and to any outlier that's listening to this here, like I want you to think for yourself. Think about like 4 or 5 different times where you had to either start over, or you did something that was experimental, or you went into something that like most other people would have looked at and been like, what are you doing? You know, and you, for you, it just made sense. I left a top company, like a top consulting company, working in a career where you basically never got fired, and I was getting getting raises when I was taking exams and so forth, and I was like, not it. I'm gonna go move to tech, you know. Right. Or I'm living in New York City, in like what I considered like one of the #1 cities on the planet, like living in Chelsea, like had the tech job. I was a 10-minute walk to my work every day. And then my wife and I were like, we're going to Singapore, you know. Right. Like it's like and so there are things that we have accomplished, and this is what I love to call this out. Like I want to actually start, I think I'm going to want to give this a name, right? But it's like I don't know, like I'll give it something for now. We'll see if it sticks, you know. But it's like the reinventor's bonus, where it's like, look, I'm experimenting with this right now, and it's okay because I know that I can reinvent it or experiment with something else later on, and that will continue to go on. So I really want to call that out because it was embedded in what you said, but it was so natural that I think that it's something that we know, we've experienced. We're like, yeah, of course we got this. And for any of us that are in that place where we're doubting or we're in that like questionable part, I want to just bring our attention back to that inner knowledge, that self-confidence, and that like the lived experience of like being able to figure it out even when it's not clear right away. What are your thoughts on that? Let's riff on this for a little bit, Bevin.
Yeah, I love these examples because, like I worked for a nonprofit organization for about 12 years. I, had various positions in the company. Was offered the position of vice president. I served for about maybe a year and a half. And then I was like, you know what? I think I want to move to a completely different state and become a landscape designer. And I did, and I started all the way over. I was brand new in the field, didn't know anything, had to learn, built that from the ground up. Then I'm like, okay, I've learned that. I've gotten my fill of it. I feel like I understand it inside and out. Time to do something different. And there is a term for this. What was the term you used?
I call it the reinventor's bonus. Like I just made up a term for it in real time. Yeah. Well,
it is a bonus. You're like, oh, this is a bonus life experience.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned about recently was, or just a few years ago, was called the high sensation seeker. And it's a personality trait where your brain is literally hardwired to desire and crave new and novel experiences, right? So that could be new cultures, new food, moving, as you said. As a matter of fact, my partner and I are getting ready to move to Mexico in a few months, and I'm learning a new language and I'll immerse myself in a new culture, and I just couldn't be more thrilled to do so. And I know that I'll meet people there who will lead to something else, which will lead to something else, which will lead to something else. And this is just how life unfolds. But yeah, I think that when you start to realize, because we do get really attached to things. We do get really attached to structures and habits and behaviors and belief systems and all these things. And the beauty of Outliers is that we can hold those things much more lightly, I think, than most people are comfortable with. And that doesn't make anyone wrong who wants that more stable kind of like, I know what's going to happen. But we actually like to know what we don't even know. We like to seek out, I wonder what will happen if I do this. I wonder what will happen if I do that. And when you begin to use your life, like I call it an intuitive laboratory, right? Because when something feels good for me, I'm highly intuitive. When it feels good for me, I move towards it. And when it doesn't, I either pause to get more information, or I say, no, that's not for me. And, some of those things have worked out great. And some of them, have not worked out as I expected. And all of that is okay. It's all learning. Right. And so, there's a real big difference when you say, I have this goal. And there's nothing wrong with goals. I have goals. I have a business plan. I have all those things. But then saying, like for example, last year, I launched this mastermind group. So excited about it. So jazzed. I had all this, ideas of like what the content was going to be. And it started, and I had a small number of people that joined. And then after 3 months, nobody came. Like I literally had the live call and nobody showed up. And I just went, and for a day or so, I was upset. I was grieving. I was like, okay. And then I sent an email. I'm like, okay, let's transition this to a different form. And I just rolled with it. Right. And so I really actually think this is kind of the future of how society will look. Right. Because one of the things my mentor was sharing, and it just sat with me so well, was, that we live in a complex, volatile, chaotic, interdependent world. We cannot see farther than maybe the next step anyway. Now we still try, our egos and all that. We still try to look ahead and make all the plans, but almost nothing I've ever planned in my life turned out exactly as I thought it was going to. And so I just kind of let go of that, right?
Let's bring that in, like, because I think this is some of the space where like we get a chance to play, and I really I've been grateful that you like we're here talking to Outliers, and you are here talking to Outliers as well, because you're catching on to and I get it with the work that you do and with the life that you live. You see like the unique space that we get a chance to play it. Not everyone is going to be able to come in and decide to experiment in the way that you experiment, and with my flavor or with anyone else's kind of flavor. But overall, we know like there's something inside of us. It's like, okay, we'll be okay. And in the doing of this, we then create a path for others to then go and say, hey, this too is possible. This too, it may not be as risky. I don't need to do it like Bevin's doing it. I don't need to do it like Niiamah's doing it. But if they both have been able to do something, then I also have a path as well. And eventually those things, just kind of like the passing of time, it becomes more people end up doing it, more structure gets put around it. And this thing that that may have been a novel idea at some point, it becomes just like a part of how we live. I love how you said we were like late stage capitalism. It's like, it makes me think about all the other stages that are around there, and what it might have been like when that was first introduced. And somebody like, wait, we're the purpose of this
paper
is
money instead of trading, I don't know, shells or something. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But now it's so embedded in life that like it's fully here. So there's these elements that I love to just call out and pull out, because what's happened as we talk is just like, it's really a celebration of the outlier, and there's an element of like, remember, it's like there's nothing we need to teach. It's just like, remember this part of you that has done this already. Remember, and my general thing, and this is why I do the work that I do. I'll be curious about like maybe your why. I'm actually really curious about it right now as I bring this up. But part of the reason I do what I do is because I'm like, wow, somehow I ended up being a person who like has lived a life. I'm living an impossible life already. From the age of 17, like there was so much that like shouldn't have happened that just happened. So so I'm like, oh, I'm one of the people who somehow has figured out a way for myself to keep trying new things and land up on my feet. I wonder how far this can go. What if I went after something that really mattered? What if I did that and allowed myself to like go through like whatever experiences I needed to, and landed on my feet after that? And what I'm hearing you in this conversation just kind of reminds me here, feels like a celebration of like this, the power of being an outlier. Like there are rules that apply to most of the people that like it just doesn't operate the same way with us. We look at it in a very different way. And that's why I'm like, I champion leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. Because I'm like, if I'm out here championing these outliers, it's creating a new idea of what can be, simply because you chose to exist and bring that out into the world.
Yes. It's so powerful what you're bringing, and the celebration is really, really important, because if you've always felt like the odd one out, which I did for a really long time in my life, especially as a child, we do need to celebrate this. And I realized some years ago that home and stability and centeredness and all those things.
Hey, I actually just lost you just a bit here, Bevin.
Outside of me.
Can you bring them back in? Of me. So you said home and stability and all those things, and then I lost you for a bit. Can you tell me what came next?
Yeah, so home and like centeredness and self and stability. I spent a lot of time seeking that outside of me, because we do need stability. I mean, we have an ego self that says, okay, I need to know where I'm going to lay my head every night. I need to know, I need to know these things. It feels good to know these things. It feels good to have that. It feels good to have some money in your bank account. It feels good to know what you're going to do the next day. And it's okay to have that, right? It's a balancing act. But when I was seeking all of that outside of myself, it was limiting, because a person couldn't provide that for me. And the place where I live couldn't provide that for me. I've lived in like 30 different places. So, and when you start to realize, oh, I'm still not feeling that, even though I made this change to another home or to another partner or to another job. And why am I not feeling that? Right? Why am I not feeling that centeredness, that groundedness, that sense of home? Because I have to really go in and understand that I trust myself. And this is what you were touching upon, right? I received this channeled message a few years ago, which is, you came here to master self-trust. And not just like occasionally, like every moment, right? It's why I don't believe in procrastination, because I think that if we're not doing something, it's not the right time, it's not the right fit. It's not, it's not what we're moving towards. It's like, what is it to have that radical level of trust in self? And to know exactly what you were saying, that even if it doesn't turn out exactly how I would like it to, or how I think it should, I'm going to bounce back up. I'm going to try something new. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to adapt. And I'm going to go on with a sense of optimism about this life. Because for me, I want to have an interesting life. Right. I want to have an interesting life. And I mean, I've had such an interesting life.
Yeah,
so
there's something about that like the way you said it, it wasn't like, oh, I want to have an interesting life. It was like, I want to have an interesting life. Like, can I just check in real quick here? We'll start wrapping up the conversation, but I want to just check in, like, for you specifically, Bevin, because as we're talking, I'm realizing why we're connecting so well. When you say I want to have like an interesting life, especially given the fact that you already have like naturally interesting things that have taken place in your life, what does that mean to you? What does it really mean to you?
What it means to me is that I just want to continue to explore my capacity to open myself to whatever shows up in every moment. Yeah. And that sounds kind of like mumbo jumbo, right? It kind of sounds like that. It's like, but I mean it. It's like, how do I, anytime I feel myself contracting back, wanting to put up a wall, wanting to be defensive, wanting to say, no, that can't possibly happen. I'm like, okay, how am I getting curious about why I'm putting those things up and creating a barrier for connection, like you and I are having, for opportunities, for abundance, for really cool experiences, for joy, for whatever,
when you say this here, it's taking me to a place of like, as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, when she says interesting, like an interesting life, it feels more like, it's like keeping the interest in life, like, and you use the word curiosity. I'm like, oh yeah, like she's interested, like keeping the interest in, just felt like a place that lived in what you were saying there. And there's a deep, that may be for you, that may be for me, but there's a deep level of like serenity inside of me right now where I'm like, okay, gotcha. Like as long as the interest is in, like, Bevin's good.
I think a lot of outliers would have considered themselves, if they think back, an old soul, right? Maybe they were way wise beyond their years as a child. They were that one who would always come out with something. They were watching everything that was going on in the family dynamics or the world. And you were that person that kind of spoke up and said something. And I think, if I look at my own experience, I sort of took on a lot of responsibility at a very young age, right? For what's going on in my family, for, supporting myself as a young person going out into the world. And what I'm trying to do now is kind of revert back to that time when I felt more free as a child, when I felt really connected to everything, when I felt excited about life, when I felt optimistic, when I was like, what's that? Oh, and asking questions and exploring and just allowing that part of myself to come forward, because I certainly have spent many, many years being ultra responsible, being, giving too much, doing all the things, taking care of other people. And now I'm like, this time is for me. This time is for me, and I'm not feeling guilty about it, and I'm being unapologetic about the fact that this time is for me.
I'm doing a dance. I'm doing like a silly dance, because I'm like on Zoom and my arms I'm like, if I shake my lower body, I don't know if you can see it. And I'm doing this dance for you. This time is for me, and I think that this, like to me, that feels like an anthem, a rally call that's out here, where it's like in a really real way. in a very real way. Like, I'm appreciative of you, and I can feel. I was going to ask you. I was like, oh, where are you heading to next? What are you living into going forward? And I think I just heard it. Because it's interesting having these conversations, Bevin. And it's very interesting being in conversation with you, because this conversation feels unlike any one that I've had on anything that we've done so far with Outliers Edge. And it's just being in it's being in the outlierness of it all. And what comes with it is like, we can talk about all the external things that can be created. I know you just finished up a festival the other day, and you got me thinking, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do a summit. I've been trying to figure it out. You mentioned the festival. I was like, maybe it's that. Oh, by the way, I heard about the Queen's Jubilee. I'm like, Jubilee. I think I can do a Jubilee. I don't know what that is, but I think that's what I want. I think I want that. And there's just this element of like allowing you in this way to just like to fully come out. And I want to thank you for bringing that. I want to thank you for being in this conversation here. And it's so interesting because we've done in this conversation, I think we've had to play a dance, and I'm thinking about this dance. Sometimes we're in the circle of like our inner being and what's happening kind of like a little bit more spiritually and less tangibly. And then like we'll go out and be like, oh yeah, but like the tangible things, check. Of course, I've done that. Like, yeah, but now let's get back to what really matters, like the inner part. And I think that's incredibly important here. And something that I might calibrate myself a little bit more toward the inner as it goes along. Because what I get about you, and I think what you get about like this, is that as an outlier, you can go and create. There's so many different things you can create. There's so many different things you can experiment with. Whatever the external thing that's happening right now is just the next external thing that's taking place. But if your internal elements aren't right, if you mentioned self-trust, if self-trust isn't there, if the belief isn't there, if you're not acting in alignment with you, and I will also say in alliance with yourself, everything's going to be just out of alignment. And take you to a place that you're not actually looking to go.
Yeah, it's a little more struggle to be in that place versus flow. And of course, we can't be in flow probably 24/7, but I'm experiencing that flow state more. Like I'll get up in the morning and just say, okay, I have this list of things that I need to do for my business or for my household or whatever. What feels good for me to start with? And it pops in, and that's what I do. And then, other things, unless there's a deadline, we'll wait. And I just trust that that's exactly what was supposed to happen. And then what happens is once I do that, a few days later, someone will be like, oh, I saw this thing that you put out there. Or, hey, I want you to be on the summit. And it just flows, right? Life is more fluid.
Yeah. You talk this, there's a presence. There's an element of addressing what's here in the present and maximizing on the present without having to be like, I have to maximize, but like being here, knowing that the past self wrote a list of future activities that need to be taken care of. And you in the present are making a choice, and that present action gets your attention, gets your energy, gets infused with you in this moment, not just to check some things off, not just to anxiously get through things, not to feel, it just gets infused with you, and people pick up on that. And it catches up to you, it catches up future present you, but you're well practiced in being with what's there, and it continues to play dividends. Bevin, I feel like you and I will probably have another conversation like this in the future. I think I like where things are going. I like how we're thinking about this here, and playing in the space of not just what's available to you, but like it really does feel like it's a really great reminder of like, hey, this is kind of how it can be, like the fluidity, the flow, the self-trust, the experimentation, the doing things like that's in alignment with you at this point. And remembering it, like this might just be a cycle, but you've been through many cycles. You've done this. You've moved many times. You've done many careers. You've lived several lives already, and you have always ended up on your feet.
Yeah.
somehow you know how to manage your way through the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you'll be good. And so I'm really feeling that here. Let's do ourselves a favor and bring this conversation to a conclusion with let's do two things. I like to end with one thing that you like to share out into the world from just like a takeaway or an insight. I call it an outsight. But we've had a tremendous conversation. There are empaths and light workers and just people in the world who would be really served by continuing their journey with you as well, right? And the abundance of where there's so many things that we have to grow from. So for any outlier that would love to do some of their journey with you, how can they move forward with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best place to probably connect with me is inside my community. And that can be found at www.1millionempaths.com. So that's the best place to connect.
And just to check in, is it all spelled out? Is it a numeral?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's a numeral. Yeah, the numeral
Okay.
1millionempaths.com. Yeah, so that's the best place to connect. And then, as far as any final advice,
An
I just
outsight. We've had insights throughout here. What's your outside for anyone that's
my
listening?
outside, my takeaway is, just each person who's listening should honor their own journey. Own that wisdom that you have gained from all the experiences that you've walked, the number of times you've reinvented yourself, the number of times you've gotten back up on your feet when something didn't work out as you thought, the number of times you celebrated triumphantly when it did. Just honor all of that, right? Because I think that when you are an outlier, and you and I were talking about maybe this is only 3% or something of the population, a lot of times people don't understand. People don't understand your journey. They don't understand why you're making the decisions you do. But you understand. You understand why you're making this decision. You know the underlying passion, force, drive, whatever that may be. And just honor that. Just honor that about yourself. And it isn't about a system. So not about taking someone else's system and applying that to your life. Yeah, there's, great things that we can learn from each other. Yes, people have wonderful advice. I've taken all kinds of tidbits from different people's teachings and all of those things. But fundamentally, we should be listening to our inner voice first. And when we get too externally focused, then we start to doubt. And it happens to me.
It happens to me.
Happened to me today, actually. Yep. But we need to be, trusting, and we need to be owning that wisdom that we've so artfully gained.
I'm going to follow my inner voice right now. Like as you were talking, I started speaking to me, and I was like, you know what, Bevin? Like, I would love to collaborate. You don't have to say yes right now, but I'm going to put it into our space, right? I'd love to collaborate with you to co-host or co-create a session that just invites people to just listen to their inner voice, because as you were saying that, I was like, ooh, do people know how? And then I was like, we can tell them how. They can also Google how, but it's about the experience of it, and actually trusting it. Like I had to do it right now. I heard, I was like, oh, that'd be good. And I almost just turn the volume down on that voice. I'm like, no, actually, I'm going to express it in this moment. This feels good to put it out in the world. Like, what if we just co-created something where for 1 hour we just facilitated people actually having an experience of listening to their inner voice, and not because it's there. It's like, this is the thing that's really interesting about the work I feel we're doing. I say shaping the next era, not creating the next era, not build. It's like, it's already here, y'all. How do we allow it out? Your inner voice is already talking. Like, we're gonna listen. So you don't have to say yes or no to it, but I know that I wanted to be in the experience and to honor that with you right now. Thank you for this. Normally I will let the outsides just sit. So I'm going to give you one more chance here, just like in one sentence, the outside here. I like the last word to be coming from you here. If you had really just say this in one last sentence for the outside, just to bookmark that, how would you put it?
Yeah. So I'm going to listen to my inner voice. I'm going to role model just like you did. that wherever you stand, if you were doing that exercise that my coach did for me, wherever you stand is perfectly fine, right? You might be looking around going, should I be standing here? Yes, that's where you should be standing.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Bevin. I am so excited for everything else that comes from here. Outliers, go check out 1millionempaths.com with the numeral 1 to start us off here. Bevin, we have many more projects, many more experiments to take in.
I agree.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape. All right. I appreciate you. All right.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We're just getting started. Take 10 seconds to think about your greatest insight from today's conversation. And if you're ready to go and bring this to a deeper, more applicable level for you, come and join us in an upcoming masterclass. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass to be coached live and to bring your aspirations, your goals, and your challenges and have them handled in real time. This is high flame, high impact, high transformation. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass and come experience your next level of leadership.